a president who isn't a yes man for the intelligence agencies. Sometimes our intelligence agencies do bad things.
I agree.
Sometimes they spy on the American people. Sometimes
we know
they
that.
violate the Fourth Amendment rights of the American people.
Well, we're going to have Bill Binney on, who used to work for the NSA, in a couple of minutes, and he's going to say that the FISA court is a joke, that the NSA spies on everybody all the time, and they use the FISA court as a subterfuge to make it appear legal. Is there any chance the FISA will go away?
I would love to see it go away. I've maintained for 8.5 years that we need massive reform to Section 702 of the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act. Look, when you can sweep up the so-called incidental collection of communications involving U.S. citizens and then just claim, oops, well, we got it in connection with something else, and then you can search that database, that's a problem.
Does the intelligence community have dirt on members of Congress, and does it use that as an instrument to keep the budget spigot flowing?
Let me put it this way. When telephone technology first evolved, it became a tool for espionage, for political espionage. The Church Committee back in the 1970s concluded that it had been going on for decades, that in every presidential administration since the advent of telephone technology, intelligence gathering agencies of the U.S. government had been used for political espionage. I find it difficult to conclude that that would all of a sudden halt with the development of modern internet technology, of modern artificial intelligence technology, of all the surveillance tools they have access to. Why would human nature suddenly halt and all these people suddenly become virtuous?
Does the Congress know that members of Congress are being spied upon by the intelligence community? Our late friend, and we both knew him and loved him, Justice Scalia, told me he knew the court was being spied upon by the intelligence community.
Yeah, I would find it difficult to believe that it was not happening. And I think many members of Congress are starting to suspect that it's true. It's interesting, though, Judge. Occasionally you'll have a colleague. I've got colleagues who have come up to me and said, shouldn't we have something in place that would prohibit them from doing this to members of Congress and members of the court?
But not to the rest of us.
Exactly. My response is, well, of course they shouldn't do that. But why on earth would we not put in place similar protections for every American citizen?
All right. I'm going to talk to you about something I know you want to talk about. So hang on a second. I want to talk to you about your new book, which I love, Our Lost Declaration, America's Fight Against Tyranny from King George to the Deep State. As far as tyranny goes, I believe the most critical feature in the Constitution, I think you agree with me, Senator, designed to prevent tyranny is the separation of powers. Congress writes the laws, the president enforces them, the courts interpret them. The president must enforce all laws, whether he agrees with them or not. Congress can't tell the president how to move troops in wartime. The courts can't raise taxes or appropriate funds. The profoundly differing responsibilities of each of the three branches of the federal government were crafted not to fortify the branches, but to keep each branch out of the business of the other two. This produced divided power, and power divided deters tyranny. That is, at least in theory, how the Constitution is supposed to work. Does anybody in the Senate, where you work, still respect the Constitution?
Yes. I would maintain that most members, nearly every member, I would say, respects the Constitution. At least they draw near to it with their lips. Their hearts are sometimes far from it, and so are their votes. And what I mean by that, and one of the reasons why I wrote this book, Our Lost Declaration, is because the Constitution provides the framework. It's the frame around the picture. The Declaration is itself the picture. It is our concept of liberty. We've got to restore that concept.
Okay, so we all know what Jefferson wrote, that our rights are inalienable, meaning they cannot be separated from us. Nobody in the government believes that. The government believes they can take away any right they want.
They believe it, they just don't vote in a manner consistent with it. They pay homage to it outwardly, but inwardly there's a lack of conviction there as manifested by their votes.
You have written in your book, and Jefferson wrote, that the consent of the governed is the linchpin to the legitimacy of the government. Yes. Do you know anybody that consents to the government?
Well, people consent to it by living, by breathing, by existing on this planet. By breathing,
we consent to the government?
Not really.
I mean, I didn't vote for this government. I don't consent to it, and I still breathe. Am I bound by what the government says without my consent?
They consent to it in the sense that until such time as they throw off a government that has become destructive of those ends, in that respect, they consent to it. But we're really flirting with disaster anytime we allow government to expand. We've been doing that for a solid 80 years. It's time for the people to roll that back. Fortunately, the revolution that we need today doesn't have to be fought with a war.
Right,
it doesn't require a single shot. It doesn't have to involve cannons and muskets. It involves our rights, and we need to reinstitute this discussion in our political discourse.
I'll tell you how the revolution can start, by reading your book about the origins of the Declaration of Independence. Senator Lee, it's always a pleasure. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
Since the release of the Mueller report, Democrats have been grappling over the I word, impeachment. As of now, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi is